maybe. We just, keep out here for accountability for all purposes, for officer safety and for, people that you guys interact with.
And I'm perfectly all right with that. I'm perfectly fine.
3 officers closed in at once, hands near their belts, while 2 cameras shoved inches from Marcus's face. "Don't move." One snapped, like it was already decided. Marcus Reed, a freelance journalist, stood on a public sidewalk outside a municipal building, phone in hand, recording. Nothing more. No warning. No conversation. Just a circle tightening around him like he'd done something wrong. They didn't ask. They performed. One officer accused him of being suspicious while the camera guys narrated over him, twisting every word. Marcus stayed calm, repeating, "I'm on public property. I know my rights." But they kept pushing louder, closer, like they want a reaction. Then something didn't add up. One of the camera guys looked straight at the lead officer and said, "Daniels, he's not cooperating." "Daniels?" The officer didn't correct him. Instead, he stepped forward and reached for the cuffs. Before we go anywhere further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The cold metal of the cuffs flashed for a split second, and Marcus instinctively took half a step back, not running, not resisting, just creating space. "Hold on," he said, voice steady but tighter now. "What am I being detained for?" No answer, just movement. The second officer shifted behind him, close enough that Marcus could feel the presence without turning his head. The third angled to his right, cutting off the sidewalk like it wasn't public anymore. It wasn't just pressure, it was positioning. Controlled. Intentional. And the cameras, they didn't miss a second. One of the guys leaned in even closer, lens almost touching Marcus's phone. "Why are you so nervous, man?" he said loudly, projecting to the small crowd starting to gather. "If you're not doing anything wrong, why not just cooperate?" Marcus exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay grounded. "I'm not nervous," he replied. "I'm being surrounded for recording in public." "That's not illegal." A woman across the street stopped walking. A man near the entrance pulled out his phone. The atmosphere was shifting. People were watching now. But instead of easing off, Officer Daniels took another step forward. "You're refusing to identify yourself," he said, louder this time, like he needed everyone to hear it. "That's not a crime." Marcus shot back immediately. There was a pause, brief but heavy. And in that moment, Marcus noticed it again. The same camera guy who had said Daniels gave a quick, subtle nod. Daniels didn't look surprised. He looked in sync. That's when it hit Marcus. This wasn't just going wrong. This was already planned. Daniels tilted his head slightly, eyes locked on Marcus. "Last chance," he said quietly. Then his hand tightened on the cuffs. Marcus doesn't move, but everything around him does. The circle tightens by inches, not feet. Subtle enough that anyone watching might miss it, but Marcus feels it instantly. The officer behind him shifts closer. The one on his right steps just enough to block the open path down the sidewalk. What was public space a minute ago now feels controlled, boxed in. Marcus keeps his hands visible, palms open at chest level. "I'm not interfering. I'm not obstructing. I'm on a public sidewalk," he says clearly, making sure both the officers and the growing crowd can hear him. Officer Daniels doesn't respond to that. Instead, he raises his voice just enough to sound authoritative, performative. "Why are you refusing to identify yourself?" The question lands wrong. Too fast. Too rehearsed. Marcus shakes his head slightly. "I'm not required to identify unless I'm suspected of a crime." "What crime do you suspect me of?" No answer. Just a stare. One of the camera guys immediately jumps in, louder than necessary. "See, this is what they do. They play games instead of just cooperating." The other one circles slightly to Marcus's left, capturing a tighter angle, like they're documenting something they already decided was happening. Marcus's jaw tightens. He's been in tense situations before, but this feels staged. Not just aggressive, structured. Then it happens again. Daniels, he's dodging the question. One of the civilians says, almost casually, "First name, no Hosetashin." Marcus locks onto that detail. That's not how strangers talk to police. Not here. Not like this. Daniels doesn't correct him. Doesn't even glance at him. He just steps closer. Now they're within arm's reach. "You're loitering," Daniels says flatly. Marcus lets out a short breath, disbelief creeping in. Loitering requires obstructing or refusing to leave private property. This is public. I am documenting. Another officer cuts in, piling on. We've had reports of suspicious activity. From who? Marcus asks immediately. No one answers that either. Instead, the pressure builds in layers. New claims, repeated commands, overlapping voices. It's not about clarity anymore. It's about control. The crowd is bigger now. A few people whisper. Someone mutters, "He's right." Another says, "Just give him your ID." Marcus feels the weight of both sides. He raises his voice just enough to cut through the noise. This is intimidation. I'm not breaking any law. Daniels leans in, lowering his voice so only Marcus can hear. You're about to. Marcus's chest tightens, not from fear, but from realization. Then Daniels makes a small, almost invisible hand signal. And, right on cue, one of the camera guys turns to the crowd and says loudly, "Wait, did he just refuse a lawful order?" The words hit the air like a spark thrown into dry grass. Refuse a lawful order? The camera guy says it again, louder this time, turning slightly so everyone around can hear it clearly, like he's anchoring a narrative before anyone else can think. Marcus immediately shakes his head. There was no lawful order given. I asked a direct question, but the damage is already starting to form. Not legally, not yet, but socially. The crowd doesn't know the law. They're reacting to tone, to volume, to confidence. Officer Daniels doesn't correct the statement. He doesn't clarify. He just watches Marcus like he's waiting for something to snap. And that's when Marcus notices it. The second camera guy has stopped moving in circles. He's now filming from a fixed position, like he's decided the scene is already set. Behind Marcus, one officer shifts his stance again, subtly tightening the space. Not rushing, just closing. You're escalating this, Daniel says calmly, but loud enough for everyone. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Marcus exhales sharply. I'm standing still. I haven't moved. I haven't threatened anyone. A bystander steps forward slightly. He's right though, he's just recording. Another voice immediately cuts in from the camera crew. You see? That's how they confuse people. They act innocent. Marcus turns his head slightly toward the sound. That's when he sees it clearly for the first time. The civilians aren't just filming. They're coordinating. One gestures subtly toward Daniels after a sentence lands. Another adjusts position only when Daniels shifts. It's not random. It's responsive. Marcus feels a cold realization building in his stomach. This isn't an interaction, he says under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. Daniels hears it anyway. He steps forward until there's barely space between them. You're being detained now, he says firmly. No explanation, no warning, just declaration. And before Marcus can respond, one officer moves in behind him, hand already reaching for his wrist. The moment the officer's hand closes in, Marcus reacts instantly. Not violently, not aggressively, just enough to pull his arm slightly away. I'm not resisting, he says fast, voice controlled but sharper now. I need you to tell me what I'm being detained for. That question hangs for half a second too long. No answer comes. Instead, Daniels raises his voice again, projecting to the crowd like he's building a case in real time. He's resisting compliance with lawful instructions. Marcus immediately shakes his head. You still haven't given one lawful instruction. A few people in the crowd react, some nodding, some confused. The tension is splitting the audience now. Two narratives forming in real time, competing for belief. The camera guys step closer again, closing angles, tightening the visual frame around Marcus like they're boxing him in on purpose. One of them says loudly, "This is exactly why people get arrested." He's escalating it himself. Marcus turns slightly, trying to keep all officers in view. That's when he notices something that sharpens everything. One of the civilians briefly stops filming and looks directly at Daniels. Not the situation. Not Marcus. Daniels. A silent check-in. Daniels gives the smallest nod back. Marcus sees it, and something inside him shifts from confusion to certainty. This is coordinated, Marcus says louder now. You're working together. The words hit the crowd differently this time. Less confusion, more tension. Daniels doesn't deny it. Instead, he steps forward again and says coldly, "Turn around." Marcus doesn't move. "I'm asking again," he replies, voice steady but strained now. "What is the legal basis for this detention?" For the first time, Daniels hesitates. Just a fraction, but enough. And in that split second of hesitation, one of the bystanders in the crowd speaks up. "Wait, I think I've seen those guys filming with police before." The air changes instantly, and every camera in the area shifts away from Marcus and toward the officers. The shift is immediate and unmistakable. The cameras are no longer just documenting Marcus. They're documenting everyone. Officer Daniels notices it too. His posture tightens slightly, like he can feel control slipping sideways instead of forward. The civilians who were pushing the narrative a moment ago now hesitate, their confidence flickering as more phones point in their direction. Marcus doesn't move. He stays exactly where he is, hands still visible, but his eyes are now scanning everything. Not just the officers, but the crowd, the behavior, the timing. Because now it's visible. Patterns. The same camera crew, always arriving too fast. The same familiarity with Daniels. The same coordinated phrasing, like rehearsed lines. And now someone in the crowd has said it out loud. "I've seen them together before." That sentence changes everything. Daniels reacts instantly, trying to regain dominance in the situation. "Step back," he orders sharply, not just to Marcus now, but to the crowd. Everyone step back, but no one does immediately. Instead, people hesitate, watching him. One of the civilians lowers his camera slightly, no longer fully committed to the performance. Another tries to laugh it off. "People always think it's something big," he mutters, but his voice doesn't carry the same confidence anymore. Marcus finally speaks again, quieter but firm. "This wasn't random," he says. "You didn't just show up. You were already here waiting." Daniels turns toward him sharply. That's enough, but it doesn't land the same way anymore. Because now the crowd is watching Daniels, not Marcus. And Marcus notices something else. A police radio crackles faintly. Daniels hears it too. For a split second, his eyes shift away, just long enough to break the performance. And when he looks back, Marcus is already watching him closely. "Was this planned?" Marcus asks. Silence. Not denial. Not correction. Just silence. Then Daniels reaches for his radio again and says something under his breath that no one around him was supposed to hear. The moment Daniels touches his radio, the entire atmosphere tightens again, but differently this time. Not like control returning, like control being managed. Marcus watches him carefully, not interrupting, but not looking away either. The crowd is still filming, still reacting, but the energy has shifted from confusion to scrutiny. People aren't just watching Marcus anymore. They're watching the officers like they're part of the story. Daniels turns slightly away from the crowd, pressing the radio closer to his mouth. "Yeah, we've got it contained," he mutters. Marcus catches it. Not fully at first, just fragments. But enough. Contained. That word doesn't belong in a normal street stop. It belongs in something planned, something structured. One of the civilians immediately tries to regain momentum. He's just trying to twist everything, he says loudly, pointing at Marcus. This is why people don't cooperate. But the reaction is weaker now. The crowd isn't buying it as easily, because people are noticing timing. The way the cameras arrived before escalation. The way Daniels never corrected the Daniels name drop. The way instructions seem to align too smoothly between officers and civilians. Marcus takes a slow step forward, not toward confrontation, but toward clarity. "You said contained," he says calmly. "What exactly is contained?" Daniel snaps back immediately, louder this time. "You are being detained for obstruction." Marcus shakes his head. "Obstruction of what?" "You still haven't identified a lawful reason for contact." That lands. Not emotionally, legally. A bystander repeats it under their breath. "Yeah. What is the actual reason?" Daniels looks around now. The crowd is no longer passive. Phones are steady. Voices are forming. And that's when one of the civilians makes a mistake. He laughs, small, dismissive, and says this always goes like this. We just document it and move on. Document it? Marcus locks onto him instantly. The word hangs. The civilian realizes too late he said too much. Daniel steps in quickly, cutting him off. Step back. Now. But Marcus has already heard enough. So this was documentation, he says slowly. And for the first time, Officer Daniels doesn't respond at all. He just stares at Marcus, like he's deciding whether to continue the script or end the scene entirely.